Size does matter, especially in WWE. The company is called the Land of the Giants, and for good reason. Some of the tallest wrestlers of all time have performed there. However, wrestling does have a habit of over-exaggerating wrestlers' heights. There's a number of WWE stars who aren't nearly as tall as the company says they are. We did a bit of digging to find out who the actual tallest WWE wrestlers are, so with that, number 10, Kurgan, 6 foot 11 inches. WWE would often refer to the Canadian Giant as exactly 7 foot tall. While they were close, Kurgan's actual height was 6 foot 11. He debuted in 1997 as a member of the Truth Commission called the Interrogator. Once the group disbanded, Kurgan would join a new faction called the Oddities. While some will say that the stable was awful, the Oddities were definitely popular with fans, so popular that they even competed at SummerSlam. In 1999, Kurgan was released from WWE. Since then, he's become an actor and has been quite successful, appearing in movies like 300, Pacific Rim, and Deadpool 2. Number 9, Eli Cottonwood, 7 foot. Competing as one of 8 rookies on NXT Season 2, Eli Cottonwood stood head and shoulders above all the other competitors, in much more of a literal sense than a figurative one. Originally a basketball player, Cottonwood didn't have much wrestling experience when he debuted in WWE. This ultimately led to him being the second person eliminated from the competition and was released from the company soon after. Sources vary a bit on his height, but stats from Eli's basketball days say he's exactly 7 foot tall, with one report even saying he was a shade over it. Even though his time in WWE was short, Eli Cottonwood's height was anything but. Number 8, Jackson Andrews, 7 foot. You may not remember this giant, as he was only on TV for about a month. In late 2010, Tyson Kidd introduced his personal bodyguard, a man named Jackson Andrews. After only a few weeks though, Andrews would be sent back to development and ultimately released in 2011. There is some debate whether Jackson Andrews was a true 7-footer, but his college basketball stats do say 7 foot. Additionally, Andrews was charged with steroid possession, and reports also said he was 7 foot tall. While his career may have been abrupt, Jackson Andrews will still go down as one of the tallest men WWE's ever seen. Number 7, Big Show, 7 foot. Throughout his career, WWE's been pretty accurate with Big Show's height. Big Show was born with a disorder called acromegaly, which is the reason he's so large. By age 12, the Big Show already stood 6 foot 2 inches tall. While in school, the world's largest athlete played football, basketball, and was even a cheerleader at one point. Eventually, Big Show found his way into wrestling and began his career in WCW before joining the WWE in 1999. Unlike the other giants we've mentioned so far, Big Show has had a lengthy and decorated career in WWE, being with the company for roughly 20 years and winning multiple championships. Even today, while he doesn't wrestle full-time, the Big Show is still competing. Because of both his massive height and prestigious career, Big Show will go down as one of the greatest giants in wrestling. Number 6, Andre the Giant, 7 foot 1 inch. Andre's height has been highly debated. WWE announced him at 7 foot 4 inches, but that's likely not true.
He was billed as 7 feet 4 inches. I think he was over 7. Whether or not it was 4 more inches, I don't know.
Andre himself even contradicted the 7 foot 4 height in an interview.
Avec 2,14 m de hauteur et 171 kg de muscles.
Even though he wasn't as tall as WWE said he was, Andre was still a spectacle, and even non-wrestling fans were amazed by his size. He sadly passed away at the age of 46, but his legacy has lasted the test of time. Even today, people still know who Andre the Giant is, and he's arguably one of the most famous wrestlers of all time. Number 5, the Great Khali, 7 foot 1 inch. Like the Big Show, the Great Khali was also born with acromegaly, which led to his incredibly tall stature. Also like Big Show, WWE has been mostly accurate when it comes to the Indian Giant's height. In the early 2000s, Khali moved to the US to become a wrestler and would eventually be signed by WWE. He made a huge impact right away by manhandling The Undertaker and later winning the World Heavyweight Championship. As time went on though, the Great Khali went from being a gigantic, powerful monster to a silly comedic character. In 2014, Khali left WWE, but still makes appearances from time to time, and every time he returns, his height is always breathtaking. Number 4, Giant Silva, 7 foot 2 inches. Born in Brazil, Silva was originally a basketball player before making the jump to wrestling. He made his WWE debut in the late 90s and would team up with another giant, Kurgan, as a member of the Oddities. Due to his size, Giant Silva had difficulties working in the ring and mainly competed in tag team matches. Despite this, the Brazilian giant still got time to show off his incredible height and strength. Silva would spend about 2 years with the WWE, but continued to wrestle in Japan and Mexico until retiring in 2010. Number 3, Omos, 7 foot 3 inches. If you're a current WWE fan, you're pretty lucky. Right now, one of the tallest men in the company's history is making regular appearances on Raw. Like many giants on this list, Omos, or his real name, Jordan Amakbihin, began as a basketball player. In 2018, he decided to change his career and signed with WWE. Omos first started appearing in one-off roles, like the Giant Black Ninja, but in October 2020, he made his official debut as AJ Styles' bodyguard. While he still hasn't had a match on TV yet, the 7'3" giant has wrestled at several untelevised NXT events. It'll be exciting to see Omos make his official in-ring debut, and like the man himself, it's gonna be huge. Number 2, Trapper John, 7 foot 4 inches. You likely aren't familiar with this giant. That's because he only wrestled one WWE match in 1986, and it wasn't even televised. The story goes that in the mid-80s, when Andre the Giant was a huge star for the WWE, WWE's rival at the time, the AWA, decided to get a giant of their own. They chose a man named John Harris, and even though his skills in the ring were lacking, he was taller than Andre. Not wanting to be the company with the smaller giant, WWE made Harris an offer and brought him in as Trapper John. As previously mentioned, Trapper only wrestled one match and was paid to stay at home for about a year. Trapper John was announced as being 7 foot 8 inches tall, but not too surprising, that number was inflated a bit. Either way, the man was still huge, but unfortunately, not many people got to witness his unreal size. And number 1, Giant Gonzalez, 7 foot 7 inches. Even though WWE's claim that Gonzalez stood 8 feet tall isn't true, he is still the tallest person to ever wrestle for the company. Jorge Gonzalez, Giant Gonzalez's real name, suffered from gigantism. When he was just 14 years old, Gonzalez already stood 6 foot 4 inches. This made him a natural fit for basketball, but due to a serious knee injury, the Giant had to retire prematurely. Gonzalez got his start in wrestling in 1990, working for WCW, but jumped over to WWE in 1993. He debuted during the Royal Rumble match and would go on to have a match against The Undertaker at WrestleMania 9. Despite being an absolute spectacle, Giant Gonzalez would spend less than a year in WWE due to his contract expiring in October 1993. The Giant wrestled for a couple more years, but because of health issues, he had to retire in 1995. Gonzalez would go back to his home country of Argentina, spending his post-wrestling years on a ranch. Sadly, Giant Gonzalez died in September 2010 due to diabetes and severe heart attacks. Even though he's no longer with us, Gonzalez will forever be remembered as the tallest wrestler in WWE history. Was there anybody you thought would be on this top 10? Let me know in the comments. Shout out to Aram Parnagan for commenting on our last video. That's a great idea, Ram. Also, watch the video on the left for more of our content. With that, I'm Zach from Tap Out Corner, and take it easy.